Welcome, curious traveler, to tonight's journey into one of the world's oldest and most remarkable civilizations, the entire history of China. From its humble beginnings along the banks of the Yellow River to its status today as a global superpower, China's history is as vast as it is captivating. Tonight, we begin at the very beginning, long before the towering skyscrapers of modern cities, long before the bustling streets of Beijing or Shanghai. We start at the birth of China itself, as a gathering of tribes on the fertile plains of the Yellow River. The tale of China is the tale of human civilization's first major steps in technology, governance, and culture. It's the story of how the ancient Chinese constructed one of the most enduring and influential cultures the world has ever known. For the first 6 segments, we'll focus on the early history of China, starting with the Neolithic Age, when the foundations of Chinese civilization were laid. We'll explore the rise of the Xia dynasty, the first Chinese dynasty, and the subsequent Shang and Zhou dynasties, which brought not only new technological innovations but also philosophical systems that would become the bedrock of Chinese thought, such as Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. Alongside these great dynasties, we'll explore the great empires of China, the Silk Road, and the development of its advanced agriculture, bureaucracy, and the building of the Great Wall of China to defend the empire from invasions. From there, we'll move through the imperial eras, where China saw the rise of legendary leaders like Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who unified China for the first time, and Emperor Wu of Han, whose reign marked the beginning of China's golden age. Through the centuries, we'll also explore China's cultural achievements, from ancient art, philosophy, poetry, and the invention of paper and gunpowder. As we near the end of the ancient era, we'll transition into modern history, exploring the more recent struggles China has faced and how it has emerged as a global superpower in the 21st century. But before we delve into the latter half of China's complex journey, we'll explore its ancient roots, laying a strong foundation that explains the world-changing power and resilience that China continues to embody today. Before we begin, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening from tonight, and what time is it in your part of the world? It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. What part of Chinese history fascinates you the most? Is it the ancient dynasties, the rise of the Silk Road, or the cultural and technological innovations that came out of China? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them as we go along. If you're ready, let's step back in time and witness the birth of China, a civilization of extraordinary complexity and depth, a civilization that has left an indelible mark on world history. The history of China spans thousands of years, a story of empires, dynasties, and revolutions. But before the rise of grand empires, there was a much quieter story, the story of how civilization itself began to take root on the fertile plains of the Yellow River. Tonight, we journey back to the beginning of this ancient civilization, tracing the path from its prehistoric origins through the rise of the first dynasties and the establishment of China as we know it today. The roots of Chinese civilization lie deep in the Neolithic period, as ancient humans first settled in the Yellow River Valley, often considered the cradle of Chinese culture. The Yellow River, also known as the Huanghe, was not only the lifeblood of agriculture but also a source of both prosperity and destruction, flooding regularly but providing fertile soil for crops. Around 10,000 BCE, early humans began to form settlements. These people were primarily hunter-gatherers, living in small communities, but as time passed, they began to practice agriculture. By around 6000 BCE, early Chinese societies began to cultivate rice, wheat, and millet, marking the shift from a nomadic lifestyle to a more settled agricultural society. The Yangshao culture, 5000 to 3000 BCE, represents one of the earliest known Chinese cultures. Archaeological findings in the Hunan province have uncovered evidence of early Chinese settlements, painted pottery, tools, and burials, which reflect an evolving society. These people were likely already practicing basic forms of farming and domestication of animals such as pigs and chickens. Their pottery and tools reveal a deep connection to the natural world, with rituals and practices deeply embedded in their daily lives. The story of China's earliest rulers begins with the Xia dynasty, circa 2070, c. 1600 BCE, which, according to traditional Chinese sources, was the first dynastic rule in Chinese history. The Xia is somewhat shrouded in mystery, as there is limited archaeological evidence to conclusively confirm its existence, and much of what we know about it comes from later texts, most notably the records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian. According to legend, the Xia dynasty was founded by Yu the Great, a leader who is said to have tamed the floods of the Yellow River and established the first dynastic rule in Chinese history. Yu is regarded as a hero who symbolized the emergence of centralized control over the natural world and the people. Although the Xia dynasty is often considered a mythological dynasty, archaeological discoveries at the Erlitou site, in modern-day Hunan province, have led some historians to believe that a proto-dynastic culture existed around this time. Evidence suggests early bronze production, which was crucial for the development of Chinese civilization. Following the Xia, the next significant dynasty was the Shang dynasty, circa 1046 BCE. The Shang is the first dynasty in Chinese history for which there is clear archaeological evidence, marking the beginning of a more documented era. The Shang dynasty is known for its advances in bronze metallurgy. The use of bronze, especially for ritual vessels, weapons, and tools, was a defining characteristic of the Shang. Archaeologists have uncovered numerous bronze artifacts, indicating not only advanced metallurgy but also complex social structures. One of the most significant discoveries from the Shang period is the oracle bone script, the earliest known form of Chinese writing. These inscriptions were carved into animal bones and turtle shells and used for divination, a form of fortune-telling practiced by Shang rulers. The oracle bones provide some of the earliest records of Chinese royal lineage, religious practices, and rituals. These bones were often used by the king or diviner to seek guidance from ancestors or spirits about military decisions, weather patterns, and personal matters. In addition to these discoveries, the Shang capital city of Yinshu, near modern-day Anyang, revealed elaborate palaces, temples, and tombs. The tombs of Shang kings, especially those of King Wu Ding, have yielded rich grave goods, such as jade, ivory, and bronze vessels, indicating a highly stratified society and a strong emphasis on ritual and the afterlife. The Shang dynasty's collapse, around 1046 BCE, was brought about by the growing power of the Zhou tribe, which overthrew the Shang and established a new order in Chinese history. The Zhou dynasty, 1046 to 256 BCE, represents one of the longest-lasting dynasties in Chinese history. The rise of the Zhou marks a significant shift in both political and philosophical thought. The Zhou kings justified their overthrow of the Shang by claiming the mandate of heaven, a concept that would shape Chinese political thought for centuries. According to the mandate of heaven, the heavenly order granted the ruler the right to govern, but only as long as they ruled justly and effectively. If a ruler became corrupt or failed to care for the welfare of the people, the mandate would be withdrawn, and another would rise to take their place. This philosophy became foundational to Chinese political theory, influencing both the imperial system and the idea of legitimacy in governance. The early Zhou period was marked by a relatively decentralized government, where local lords controlled their territories. The Zhou king had nominal control over the entire territory, but local lords enjoyed significant autonomy. This feudal system is often referred to as the Western Zhou period, 1046 to 771 BCE, a time of relative peace and prosperity. However, as the Zhou kingdom expanded, the power of the lords grew, and the central authority of the king weakened. This led to the eventual breakdown of the Zhou feudal system and the emergence of the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BCE, where numerous states vied for control over China. The Zhou period also witnessed the birth of Confucianism, one of China's most influential philosophical traditions. The teachings of Confucius, 551 to 479 BCE, emphasized the importance of virtue, rituals, family relationships, and the idea that a ruler should lead by example. Confucius sought to restore social order and morality during a time of political fragmentation. His ideas would go on to shape Chinese culture, government, and education for millennia. The Zhou dynasty is often remembered for its advancements in ironworking, agriculture, and philosophy. During the Zhou period, iron tools and weapons began to replace their bronze counterparts, leading to improvements in farming and military capabilities. The introduction of iron plows and the widespread use of iron tools helped increase agricultural productivity, allowing China's population to grow. The Zhou also saw the creation of some of China's earliest written texts, which contributed to the continuity of Chinese culture. Their historical and philosophical writings laid the groundwork for later dynasties and influenced Confucian scholars who followed. The rise of philosophical schools, including Taoism and legalism, would continue to shape Chinese political and cultural thought for centuries. The latter part of the Zhou dynasty, known as the Eastern Zhou period, 770 to 256 BCE, saw a decline in central authority and the rise of regional warlords. The disintegration of the Zhou system led to the Warring States period, where 7 powerful states, Qi, Chu, Yan, Han, Zhou, Wei, and Qin, fought for dominance. The Warring States period was a time of intense warfare, but also a period of intellectual flourishing. During this time, philosophical schools developed, including legalism, which promoted strict laws and state control, and Taoism, which emphasized living in harmony with nature. These schools of thought would continue to shape Chinese society and politics in the centuries to come. The Warring States period eventually ended when the state of Qin emerged victorious, unifying China and founding the Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BCE. The period from China's prehistoric beginnings to the end of the Zhou dynasty laid the foundations for one of the world's most enduring civilizations. From the rise of the Shang dynasty and the Zhou feudal system to the philosophical developments that would guide future generations, this period of Chinese history was one of immense cultural and political significance. China, as we know it today, was not built in a day. The history of this civilization stretches back more than 5,000 years, a tapestry woven with the threads of dynastic rule, intellectual thought, and societal evolution. It is a land steeped in myth, legend, and historical significance, where empires rose and fell, but the idea of China as a unified entity always endured. But where did it all begin? Let's take a journey back to the very origins of China, when early tribal societies began to form into a unified state. This segment focuses on the Shang dynasty, circa 1600 to 1046 BCE, one of the earliest known Chinese dynasties, and the era in which Chinese civilization started to coalesce into the foundational structure that would define its future. Long before the establishment of the mighty Qin dynasty, China's foundations were laid in the Neolithic period, which saw the emergence of agriculture, urbanization, and the development of bronze working. These early developments laid the groundwork for the unification of various warring tribes into the first dynastic rule. In the period known as the Xia dynasty, circa 2070 to 1600 BCE, China's first semi-legendary dynasty, society began to take form with rulers who claimed the mandate of heaven, a divine right to rule the land. While much of the Xia dynasty remains shrouded in mystery, it is believed to be the first attempt at creating a centralized government that would later evolve into the Great Chinese Empire. Yet, it was the rise of the Shang dynasty that marked the true emergence of China as we understand it today. The Shang dynasty, which ruled from the Yellow River Valley, is often regarded as the first historically verified dynasty of China, with archaeological evidence offering clear insights into the era. The Shang dynasty ruled from approximately 1600 BCE to 1046 BCE, and it is during this period that we begin to see organized state structures, a centralized government, and significant advancements in technology and culture. The Shang people are credited with the development of a distinct Chinese civilization that included innovations such as bronze casting, the use of oracle bones, and the written Chinese script. The Shang capital, Anyang, is one of the most significant archaeological sites in China. The ruins of Anyang reveal the palaces, temples, and rituals of a society steeped in religious practice and power. The Shang rulers were not merely kings, they were seen as divinely chosen leaders with the mandate of heaven, and they wielded their authority to maintain order and prosperity. During the Shang period, the city of Anyang became a center of politics and religion. The Shang kings performed important religious rituals, which included making offerings to ancestral spirits and nature deities to ensure the prosperity of their people. These rituals involved divination, where oracle bones, pieces of turtle shells and animal bones were inscribed with questions and then heated until cracks appeared, providing guidance from the spirits. The Shang dynasty was also a time of remarkable artistic achievement. Bronze casting reached new heights, with elaborate ritual vessels being created for use in ceremonies and burial practices. The Shang people were skilled artisans, creating detailed jade carvings, pottery, and textiles that displayed their advanced craftsmanship. One of the most profound developments during the Shang dynasty was the invention of Chinese writing, a system that would evolve over millennia to become the foundation for the written language used in China today. The oracle bones are considered one of the first instances of Chinese characters, marking the beginning of a written history for the Chinese people. The writing system developed during the Shang period was deeply connected to religion and governance. The king and his officials used the characters to communicate with gods and ancestors, documenting the decisions made during rituals and the outcomes of divinations. This form of written communication not only helped unify the country under the rule of a central authority but also established the importance of record-keeping in Chinese society. As the Shang dynasty reached its peak, a growing dissatisfaction within the ruling elite began to take shape. The last Shang king, Zhou, was considered a tyrant by his subjects. This dissatisfaction led to the Zhou revolt, which culminated in the overthrow of the Shang rulers around 1046 BCE. The Zhou dynasty, which succeeded the Shang, is one of the longest-running and most influential dynasties in Chinese history, marking a new era of philosophical and cultural development. However, before this transition, the Shang dynasty's fall and the Zhou conquest set the stage for one of the most critical periods in Chinese history, the formation of the Chinese imperial state. The Shang period was not only about the development of a centralized state and religious practices but also about the establishment of elite classes. The king, with his noble class, controlled the land, the labor, and the military forces of the kingdom. Warfare became an essential element of Shang society, with the Shang kings regularly launching military campaigns to expand their territory and maintain their hegemony over neighboring tribes. The importance of military power can be seen in the elaborate bronze weaponry and chariots that were used by the Shang rulers. The armies of the Shang were highly organized and skilled in the use of bronze weapons, and their ability to dominate their rivals ensured their dominance for centuries. In addition to military power, sacrifices played an important role in Shang society. The king would offer sacrifices, including human sacrifices, to the gods to secure divine favor and ensure the prosperity of the kingdom. These sacrifices were part of a broader system of rituals that were believed to maintain harmony between heaven and earth. The Shang dynasty left behind a wealth of cultural and material evidence that helps us understand daily life during this era. Artistic works from the Shang period show the level of sophistication achieved by the people, and the bronze vessels, jade ornaments, and pottery provide insight into the artistic preferences of the time. The Shang also had a deep connection to nature, as evidenced by their belief in nature spirits and the ritualistic use of animal sacrifices. This connection to nature extended to their agriculture, with the Shang relying heavily on rice cultivation and farming for their sustenance. While the Shang dynasty came to an end with the Zhou conquest, its influence on Chinese culture, governance, and religion remained significant. The development of writing, bronze metallurgy, and ritual practices during the Shang period would continue to shape Chinese society for centuries. The Zhou dynasty inherited much from the Shang, but it also introduced its own ideas about governance, philosophy, and societal organization that would have a lasting impact on the entire East Asian region. In many ways, the Shang dynasty represents the dawn of Chinese civilization. It marked the beginning of a complex, interconnected society, with a strong emphasis on centralized authority, religious rituals, and military prowess, elements that would continue to define Chinese civilization for millennia. The Shang dynasty laid the foundations for many of the aspects of Chinese culture and governance that would follow. From the development of written language and bronze casting to the rise of centralized government and religious rituals, the Shang period was a time of significant cultural growth. In the year 221 BCE, the Qin dynasty ushered in one of the most transformative chapters in the long history of China. The first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, would unite the warring states and establish a centralized imperial system that would lay the foundation for imperial China as we know it today. The Qin dynasty's rise was not just about military conquest or political maneuvering, it was about vision, innovation, and the unification of one of the world's oldest civilizations under a single banner. The story of the Qin dynasty and its first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, is as dramatic as it is complex. From the first steps of unification to the massive reforms and monumental construction projects, the Qin dynasty represented both the zenith of centralized power and the heights of authoritarian rule. But the legacy left behind would prove to be a double-edged sword, marked by both great achievements and brutal repression. The rise of the Qin state begins in the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BCE, a time when China was fractured into numerous competing states. This era was defined by constant warfare, political intrigue, and shifting alliances. Among these warring states, the Qin were often seen as a formidable military power, with a ruthlessness that set them apart from their rivals. At the heart of the Qin state's success was its ability to adapt to new military tactics, technological innovations, and strategic alliances. The Qin military was unmatched, benefiting from superior iron weapons, chariots, and infantry formations that enabled it to overpower the other states. With every conquest, the Qin state expanded its borders and consolidated power, eventually positioning itself as the dominant force among the warring factions. Qin Shi Huang, born as Zhang in 259 BCE, ascended to the throne of the Qin state at the young age of 13. His reign would prove to be transformative for China. Under his rule, the Qin state would expand to become the first unified empire in Chinese history. As he came of age, Zhang was determined to unite the fractured states of China. His ambition was clear: to consolidate power under one ruler and forge a unified empire, free from the chaos of the Warring States period. His military campaigns, guided by careful strategy and the ruthless enforcement of loyalty, soon began to pay off. By 221 BCE, the Qin state had defeated its rivals, and Zhang proclaimed himself Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China. Once Qin Shi Huang unified China, he immediately began implementing sweeping reforms to create a centralized government that would control the entire empire. His reign marked a departure from the feudal system that had previously governed the individual states. The new emperor divided China into 36 administrative districts, each governed by officials appointed directly by the emperor. This system of centralization allowed for more efficient governance and ensured that local powers could not challenge the authority of the emperor. Qin Shi Huang also introduced a uniform legal code, standardizing the law across the empire. His legal reforms helped to establish the idea of a strong, centralized state, where the emperor's word was law. Perhaps the most significant of Qin Shi Huang's reforms was his creation of a unified currency system. Prior to unification, each state had its own form of currency, which made trade and commerce across China difficult. Qin Shi Huang standardized coinage across the empire, allowing for more efficient trade and economic activity. He also standardized weights and measures, further promoting economic cohesion. In addition to economic reforms, the emperor undertook monumental construction projects that would reshape China's physical and cultural landscape. The most famous of these was the construction of the Great Wall of China, a massive fortification meant to protect the empire from invading forces from the north. The Great Wall of China is one of the most iconic symbols of Chinese civilization. Built to protect the newly unified empire from the nomadic Xiongnu tribes to the north, the wall stretches for over 13,000 miles across China, winding through mountains, deserts, and plains. The wall was constructed using a combination of brick, stone, and earth, and served as both a physical barrier and a psychological one, representing the strength of the emperor's rule. The wall was not built all at once, but over many years, with workers being conscripted from all corners of the empire. The construction was grueling, and many workers died during the process. Despite this, the Great Wall became an enduring symbol of Qin Shi Huang's authority and his determination to protect his empire at all costs. In addition to the Great Wall, Qin Shi Huang also initiated the construction of roads, canals, and palaces throughout the empire. These projects were part of a larger vision to unify China not just politically but also geographically and economically. By improving infrastructure, Qin Shi Huang was able to facilitate communication, trade, and military movement across the vast empire. Despite his monumental achievements, Qin Shi Huang was deeply concerned with his legacy and immortality. Throughout his reign, he sought ways to preserve his power beyond death. This obsession led him to search for the elixir of life, a potion believed to grant eternal life. He sent expeditions across China and to the seas in search of this mythical substance. This pursuit of immortality became an all-consuming obsession, one that led him to seek out alchemy and other mystical practices. In addition, Qin Shi Huang commissioned the construction of his mausoleum, an extravagant burial site that would eventually house the Terracotta Army, a vast army of clay soldiers meant to protect him in the afterlife. The Terracotta Army is one of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries in history. The army consists of thousands of life-sized statues, each uniquely crafted to resemble soldiers, chariots, and horses. These statues were placed in the tomb to accompany the emperor in death, ensuring his protection and status in the afterlife. The sheer scale of the tomb and the army demonstrates Qin Shi Huang's immense power and his belief in his own importance. While Qin Shi Huang's reign was marked by significant achievements, it was also characterized by brutal repression. In his efforts to centralize power and suppress dissent, the emperor employed harsh methods. One of the most infamous events during his reign was the burning of books in 213 BCE, a campaign designed to eliminate any texts that might challenge the authority of the emperor. Qin Shi Huang ordered the burning of Confucian texts and other works that could inspire rebellion or promote alternative philosophies. This act has been condemned as one of the most severe examples of censorship in Chinese history. Thousands of scholars were also executed for resisting the emperor's control over knowledge. Additionally, forced labor was used to build the emperor's monumental projects, including the Great Wall and his mausoleum. The brutality of these projects led to widespread resentment among the people, and by the time of Qin Shi Huang's death, his empire was rife with discontent. Despite his oppressive methods, Qin Shi Huang's legacy endured. The centralized state he created would become the model for successive Chinese dynasties, and his reforms laid the foundation for future emperors. The Terracotta Army and the Great Wall stand as enduring symbols of his ambition and determination to shape the future of China. Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE, and the empire he built soon began to unravel. His son, Qin Shi, was unable to hold the empire together, and within a few years, rebellion broke out across the empire. The harshness of the Qin regime, combined with internal instability, led to the fall of the Qin dynasty and the rise of the Han dynasty in 202 BCE. While the Qin dynasty was short-lived, its impact on China was profound. The imperial system of governance, the construction of the Great Wall, and the cultural legacy of Qin Shi Huang would influence Chinese history for centuries to come. The reign of Qin Shi Huang was one of monumental achievement, unprecedented centralization, and brutal repression. His vision of a unified China, though achieved at great cost, laid the groundwork for the imperial system that would dominate China for over 2 millennia. The legacy of the Qin dynasty, despite its brief existence, endures in the cultural and historical identity of China. As the Meiji period, 1868 to 1912, came to a close, Japan had undergone a remarkable transformation. What had once been a feudal society, isolated from the world, had quickly evolved into an industrialized, militarized, and modernized nation-state. Tokyo, which had emerged as the political and economic heart of this newly united nation, now stood at the threshold of a new century, one that would challenge the nation's resolve and vision for its future. The early years of the 20th century saw Japan assert itself as a rising imperial power, expanding its influence in East Asia. But this was not to be a path of peace. As the Meiji period's optimism and growth gave way to the new century, Japan's burgeoning power would bring it into conflict with both Western nations and its neighbors. By the time the Taisho period, 1912 to 1926, began, Tokyo had already experienced enormous changes, from its political center to a global metropolis. The rapid pace of industrialization, the rise of international trade, and Japan's expanding military ambitions would all play a key role in shaping the trajectory of the city and the nation. The Taisho period is often seen as a time of experimentation and change, both politically and culturally. Following the death of Emperor Meiji, his son Emperor Taisho took the throne, but his reign was marked by political instability and the challenges of maintaining the modernization process initiated during the Meiji period. Politically, Japan faced growing internal unrest and the rise of political parties, which began to influence the nation's governance. The political system, still largely dominated by the military and bureaucracy, was increasingly challenged by civilian interests, leading to a period of democratic experimentation, known as Taisho democracy. While the political structure of the country was undergoing changes, the economy continued to grow. The early 20th century saw Tokyo emerge as one of the world's largest cities, with a growing middle class that thrived on the expansion of trade and the rise of the industrial economy. The transformation of Tokyo during the Taisho period was not just economic, it was cultural. The Taisho period also brought with it a cultural renaissance. As Japan's modernization continued, the arts and literature flourished in Tokyo, blending traditional influences with new ideas from the West. Western-style art, literature, and philosophy found their way into the city, which became a melting pot of traditional Japanese and Western styles. This period marked the rise of the Japanese avant-garde in art and literature. The Taisho era saw the emergence of new movements, such as Shingeki, New Theater, and the flourishing of modernist literature, led by authors like Ryunosuke Kutagawa and Natsume Soseki. The city's cafes, theaters, and streets were filled with intellectual debates, while Tokyo became the focal point of Japan's cultural scene. The artistic renaissance during the Taisho period helped Tokyo position itself as a global cultural capital, blending traditional Japanese crafts with modern European influences. Artists and intellectuals sought to define what it meant to be Japanese in a rapidly changing world. Despite the political instability and social unrest of the Taisho period, Japan's economy continued to expand. The growth of industries such as shipbuilding, textiles, and steel production helped Tokyo become a central node in Japan's growing industrial empire. The city's economic might was evident in the construction of new buildings, the expansion of transportation systems, and the rise of major corporations like Mitsubishi and Mitsui. However, this growth was not without its challenges. As Japan continued to industrialize, the country's military ambitions also grew. Tokyo, as the center of military and industrial activity, became a key player in the nation's expanding imperialistic goals. Japan's territorial expansion began with its victory over China in the Sino-Japanese War, 1894–1895, followed by its involvement in the Russo-Japanese War, 1904–1905. These military successes solidified Japan's position as a regional power in East Asia. As Tokyo and Japan continued to develop economically, the country's imperial ambitions began to take center stage. Japan's victory in the Russo-Japanese War marked a significant turning point in the nation's military and political standing. This victory provided Japan with newfound credibility on the international stage and led to the country's growing desire to assert its dominance in East Asia. World War I, 1914–1918, offered Japan the opportunity to expand its imperial reach. As the war raged in Europe, Japan seized the opportunity to expand its influence in China and the Pacific, particularly through its control of German territories in the region. Japan's participation in the war on the side of the Allies enhanced its position as a global power. However, while Japan's economy boomed during the war, the country's growing imperial ambitions led to tensions with other world powers, particularly the United States and Great Britain. These tensions would eventually contribute to Japan's path toward militarism in the 1930s. The Showa period began in 1926 with the ascension of Emperor Hirohito, and it marked a dramatic shift in Japan's political and military focus. The economic boom of the 1920s began to falter in the early 1930s with the global impact of the Great Depression, but Japan's military leadership saw this as an opportunity to push for imperial expansion. The military government began to exert greater influence over the country's affairs, and by the 1930s, Japan had adopted a policy of aggressive territorial expansion. Japan's increasing militarism led to its invasion of Manchuria in 1931, followed by the full-scale invasion of China in 1937. These actions set the stage for Japan's entry into World War II. Tokyo, as the capital of an increasingly militarized state, became the center of Japan's imperialistic ambitions. The rise of militarism led to significant changes in the city, as the government and military reoriented the economy and culture to support the war effort. The city's skyline began to take on a more industrial and military-focused character, as factories and armaments production took precedence over civilian infrastructure. The consequences of Japan's imperial expansion and militarism became fully apparent during World War II. By the time the war began in 1939, Japan had already become an aggressor nation, involved in conflict in China, and its relationship with the United States was deteriorating rapidly. Tokyo's role as the political and military center of Japan put it directly in the crosshairs of the Allied forces. The city of Tokyo suffered tremendous losses during the war. Bombing raids from American forces, particularly the firebombing raids in 1945, devastated much of the city. The raids, which targeted Tokyo's civilian infrastructure, killed tens of thousands of people and destroyed vast swathes of the city. The once thriving metropolis was left in ruins, and it seemed as though Tokyo's rise as a world power had been abruptly halted. The early 20th century was a time of great change and turbulence for Tokyo. The city had risen from a feudal capital to a global imperial power, and its economic and political influence had extended well beyond its borders. Yet, with the devastation of World War II, Tokyo faced an uncertain future. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, China found itself at the crossroads of profound change. For nearly 2 millennia, the Qin dynasty had ruled China, but by the time the 19th century drew to a close, it was a shadow of its former self. Internally weakened by corruption, social unrest, and external pressures from Western powers and Japan, the Qin dynasty was on the brink of collapse. The old imperial order that had governed China for over 2,000 years was giving way to a new era, marked by revolution, civil war, and a radical transformation of the state. In this segment, we will trace China's transition from an imperial system under the Qin to the establishment of a republic in the early 20th century, and the profound social and political changes that followed. The century would witness wars, struggles for sovereignty, and the creation of a new Chinese identity, one that would evolve dramatically by the late 20th century into the China we know today. By the mid-19th century, the Qin dynasty, which had ruled since 1644, was facing a series of challenges that would ultimately prove insurmountable. The Opium Wars, 1839 to 1842, 1856 to 1860, with Great Britain and other Western powers resulted in a series of humiliating defeats, forcing China to sign unequal treaties that favored Western powers and ceded valuable territories like Hong Kong to the British. These wars highlighted China's inability to defend its sovereignty and exposed the weaknesses of the Qin imperial system. In addition to foreign pressures, the Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864, one of the deadliest conflicts in human history, further destabilized the Qin government. Led by Hong Xiuquan, who believed himself to be the younger brother of Jesus Christ, the rebellion sought to overthrow the Qin dynasty and establish a new, radical Christian-inspired state. The rebellion caused an estimated 20 to 30 million deaths, devastating large parts of southern China and severely weakening the Qin regime. As China faced internal rebellions and external invasions, a series of reform attempts were made by Qing officials. The self-strengthening movement in the 1860s and 1870s aimed to modernize China's military and industrial capacity, but progress was slow, and the reforms often met with resistance from conservative factions within the Qing court. The Boxer Rebellion of 1900, an anti-foreign, anti-Christian uprising, was another indication of the Qin government's weakening hold on power. The rebellion was brutally suppressed by an 8-nation alliance of Western powers and Japan, further humiliating China and signaling the urgent need for reform. By the early 20th century, the Qin dynasty, unable to adapt to the modern world, was on the verge of collapse. The final blow to the Qin dynasty came in 1911, when widespread discontent and a series of uprisings culminated in the Xinhai Revolution. The revolution, sparked by the Wuchang Uprising of October 1911, was fueled by both intellectual reformers and military officers who sought to overthrow the old imperial system and establish a republic. Leaders like Sun Yat-sen, a physician and revolutionary, played a key role in organizing the Nationalist Party, Kuomintang, or KMT, to promote the ideals of democracy and nationalism. The revolution was successful in toppling the Qin dynasty, and on January 1, 1912, the Republic of China was officially declared with Sun Yat-sen as its provisional president. This event marked the end of over 2 millennia of imperial rule and the birth of a new, republican China. However, the transition from imperial rule to a republican government was anything but smooth. The newly established Republic of China faced numerous challenges, including a lack of central authority, regional warlords vying for power, and the country's continued vulnerability to foreign influence. In the years following the revolution, China was embroiled in civil conflict, as different factions vied for control, and the country struggled to stabilize. In the years after the fall of the Qin dynasty, China entered a period known as the Warlord Era, 1916 to 1928, during which the country was divided into various regions controlled by military leaders or warlords. These warlords often operated independently, fighting for control over territory, resources, and influence. While the Republic of China technically existed, the government in Beijing was weak and lacked control over much of the country. The Kuomintang, KMT, led by Sun Yat-sen and later Chiang Kai-shek, sought to unite China under a single government, but their efforts were frequently thwarted by the power of the warlords. In the midst of this political chaos, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, founded in 1921, began to gain influence. The CCP, inspired by the Russian Revolution and Marxist ideology, sought to overthrow the nationalist government and establish a communist state in China. The CCP's rise marked the beginning of a long ideological and military struggle for control of the country. By 1928, after years of warfare and political maneuvering, Chiang Kai-shek, the leader of the Kuomintang, succeeded in unifying China and establishing a government in Nanjing. Chiang's government represented a new era for China, one focused on national modernization, industrialization, and military strength. Despite efforts to build a strong centralized government, Chiang's regime faced numerous challenges, including Japanese imperialism, internal corruption, and the rise of communist forces. China's struggle for sovereignty would intensify as Japan increasingly encroached on Chinese territory. One of the most significant events in modern Chinese history was the Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937 to 1945, which became part of the broader World War II. Japan's imperial ambitions led to the invasion of China, starting with the Marco Polo Bridge incident in 1937, which marked the beginning of full-scale hostilities. The war resulted in widespread devastation for China, with millions of casualties, both military and civilian. Nanjing, the capital, fell to the Japanese in 1937, and the Nanjing Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanking, became one of the war's most horrific atrocities, with hundreds of thousands of civilians and prisoners of war being killed. During this period, Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist government was forced into a coalition with the Chinese Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, to fight against the common enemy, Japan. Despite their political differences, the nationalists and communists temporarily united in the Chinese United Front to combat the Japanese invasion. After Japan's defeat in 1945, the Chinese Civil War between the nationalists and communists resumed, eventually leading to the establishment of the People's Republic of China under the leadership of Mao Zedong in 1949. In 1949, after years of civil war, Mao Zedong and the Chinese Communist Party emerged victorious. The People's Republic of China, PRC, was officially proclaimed on October 1, 1949, marking the beginning of a new chapter in Chinese history. Mao's leadership brought radical changes to China, with the government focusing on land reforms, social equality, and the promotion of communism. Mao's policies, however, were often marked by extreme measures that led to social upheaval and economic struggles. The Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 1962, a campaign aimed at rapidly industrializing China and collectivizing agriculture, led to a severe famine, causing millions of deaths. The Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, followed, during which Mao sought to purge China of perceived capitalist and traditional elements, leading to widespread persecution, destruction of cultural artifacts, and the collapse of the education system. The period between the fall of the Qin dynasty and the rise of the People's Republic of China was marked by intense turmoil, with wars, political upheaval, and revolutionary struggles. Despite the many challenges, China emerged from this period as a new political entity, a communist republic under Mao Zedong. However, Mao's rule and the subsequent reforms would have a profound impact on China, setting the stage for the nation's eventual emergence as a global superpower in the later half of the 20th century. By the dawn of the 20th century, China stood at a crossroads. Its ancient empire, once one of the most powerful in the world, had fallen into disarray. Imperial China, a civilization that had lasted for millennia, was on the brink of collapse under the weight of internal strife, foreign invasions, and foreign imperialism. Yet, as China faced its darkest hours, it would also experience one of the most dramatic transformations in world history. This transformation would unfold through a series of revolutions, wars, and a bold move toward modernization that would alter China's trajectory and make it one of the most powerful and influential nations in the world. In this segment, we will journey through China's revolutionary history, from the fall of the Qin dynasty in 1911, through the rise of communism, the challenges of World War II, the Chinese Civil War, and the eventual rise of China as a global power in the 21st century. At the start of the 20th century, the Qin dynasty, the last imperial dynasty of China, was in decline. The once great empire was struggling with internal revolts, economic instability, and the humiliating incursions of foreign powers. The Opium Wars of the mid-19th century had already weakened China's sovereignty, and the Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864, devastated the population and infrastructure of China. The final blow to the Qin dynasty came with the 1911 revolution, which was sparked by a series of uprisings and led by intellectuals, military officers, and reformers who were inspired by Western ideals and the belief that China needed to modernize and abandon the old imperial system. The revolution culminated in the abdication of the last emperor, Puyi, and the establishment of the Republic of China under the leadership of Sun Yat-sen, a key figure in the revolution and the founder of the Nationalist Party, Kuomintang, or KMT. However, the Republic of China faced immediate challenges. The country was divided by regional warlords, the central government lacked control over much of the nation, and the new government struggled to gain legitimacy. In the face of internal chaos and the continued pressure from foreign powers, the Republic could not easily navigate the path of modernization. Sun Yat-sen envisioned a modern and unified China, free from the grip of imperialism and governed by democratic principles. His leadership, however, was short-lived. Sun faced internal opposition, and although he was hailed as the father of modern China, it was Chiang Kai-shek, a military leader within the Kuomintang, who would come to dominate the political landscape of early Republican China. Chiang's nationalist government struggled with the threat of Japanese imperialism and internal divisions, including the growing influence of communist forces led by Mao Zedong. During the 1920s and 1930s, Chiang's government engaged in a civil war with communist forces, which were based in rural areas and led by the Chinese Communist Party, CCP. Despite Chiang's efforts to consolidate power, the KMT's control was limited, and the nation's deep political fractures would eventually play a key role in the dramatic changes to come. During the 1930s, China faced another, even more pressing threat. Imperial Japan, which had been aggressively expanding its territory throughout East Asia, invaded China in 1937, marking the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War. The war was devastating for China, with millions of civilians killed, cities destroyed, and large parts of the country under Japanese occupation. The Japanese invasion exposed the weaknesses of both the nationalist government and the communist forces, but it also provided an opportunity for the two factions to temporarily unite in the face of a common enemy. Despite the brutal occupation, China's resistance, particularly in cities like Chongqing and the rural guerrilla warfare led by the Chinese Communists, helped to preserve the nation's spirit. After the defeat of Japan in 1945, China's civil war resumed, this time between the nationalists and the communists, both of whom had been supported by the Allies during the war. The Chinese Civil War, which had been a backdrop to Japan's invasion, escalated in the aftermath of World War II, leading to one of the most significant events in modern Chinese history. The Chinese Civil War, 1945 to 1949, was fought between the forces of the nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek, and the communists, led by Mao Zedong. The nationalists, backed by the United States, controlled the cities and the military, while the communists, who were gaining popularity among the rural poor, fought a guerrilla campaign that was increasingly successful. In the end, the communist forces triumphed, and in 1949, Mao Zedong proclaimed the founding of the People's Republic of China, PRC, in Beijing. The nationalists, led by Chiang, retreated to the island of Taiwan, where they established a rival government that claimed to be the legitimate government of all of China. The victory of the communists in the Chinese Civil War fundamentally reshaped China. Mao's vision of a classless society, where the peasants and workers would be the backbone of the nation, began to take root, but the new government would also face enormous challenges in consolidating power. Under Mao's leadership, China took bold steps to reshape the nation through radical policies like the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution. Mao sought to rapidly industrialize China and collectivize agriculture in the 1950s through the Great Leap Forward, but the policy led to widespread famine, causing the deaths of millions of people. In the 1960s, Mao launched the Cultural Revolution, a campaign to purge China of traditional cultural elements and eliminate perceived enemies of the revolution, including intellectuals, political rivals, and anyone considered to be a threat to Mao's ideological purity. The Cultural Revolution led to widespread social upheaval, violence, and the destruction of China's cultural heritage. Despite these turbulent years, Mao's government also made progress in healthcare, education, and gender equality, with policies aimed at lifting the peasantry out of poverty and granting women more rights. However, these efforts were often overshadowed by the negative impacts of the radical policies. After Mao's death in 1976, China entered a new era under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, who took control in the late 1970s. Deng recognized that China needed to open up to the world and modernize its economy to become competitive. This led to the reform and opening up policies that began in 1978. Deng's reforms included privatizing agriculture, introducing market-oriented economic reforms, and opening China to foreign investment. The country also began to experiment with special economic zones, SEZs, where capitalist-style businesses could operate with fewer restrictions. This period of reform sparked China's economic boom, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and turning China into the world's factory. The 1990s saw China join the World Trade Organization, WTO, solidifying its role in the global economy. As China entered the 21st century, it began to emerge as a true global superpower. The country's rapid economic growth, coupled with its massive population, made it an increasingly influential player on the world stage. China became the world's second-largest economy, and its manufacturing and technology sectors flourished. Under the leadership of Xi Jinping, China's influence has continued to grow. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is one of the most ambitious projects undertaken by China, aiming to connect nations through infrastructure and trade routes spanning Asia, Africa, and Europe. China's global presence is not limited to economics, it has become a major player in geopolitics, technology, and military power. The rise of China has brought both opportunities and challenges to the international community, particularly in relation to trade, human rights, and security. From the fall of the Qin dynasty to the rise of communism under Mao Zedong, through the era of reforms under Deng Xiaoping, and finally to the emergence of a global superpower in the 21st century, China's journey is one of remarkable transformation. Today, China stands at the crossroads of tradition and modernity, balancing its ancient heritage with its role as a dominant global force. The story of China's rise in the 21st century is nothing short of extraordinary. In a matter of decades, this ancient civilization, once weakened by war, revolution, and isolation, has transformed into a global superpower. To understand how China made such a remarkable transformation, we must look back at the decisive moments that shaped the country's modern identity. The Qin dynasty, which had ruled China for over 250 years, was on its last legs by the early 20th century. With internal turmoil, corruption, and the pressures of foreign imperialism, it was clear that a new chapter for China was on the horizon. The Xinhai Revolution of 1911 marked the end of the imperial system in China. The Qing emperor was deposed, and Sun Yat-sen became a national hero as he advocated for the establishment of a republic. The Republic of China was founded in 1912, and Sun Yat-sen's vision for a modern, unified China was born. Yet, the republic faced many challenges: warlordism, foreign interference, and a struggling economy. The dream of a unified nation seemed distant. In the midst of this instability, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, led by figures like Mao Zedong, began to gain traction. Mao's ideas of communism resonated with peasants who were dissatisfied with the feudal system and the ruling Kuomintang, KMT, party, led by Chiang Kai-shek. By the mid-1920s, the CCP had gathered a following, leading to a civil war that would last for decades. The Long March of 1934 to 1935 was a critical event in the rise of the CCP. Mao and his forces, retreating from Chiang Kai-shek's KMT army, embarked on an arduous, strategic march across China's mountainous terrain. Despite the hardships, this marked the emergence of Mao as the leader of the communist forces, and it set the stage for the eventual victory of the CCP over the KMT. Meanwhile, China's struggles were compounded by foreign occupation, notably Japanese invasions in the 1930s and 1940s. World War II drained China, both militarily and economically, and left the nation deeply fragmented. After World War II, the struggle between the communists and nationalists intensified. The Chinese Civil War resumed, and the CCP, now firmly led by Mao Zedong, gained popular support by promising land reforms, social equality, and national independence. The nationalists, led by Chiang Kai-shek, were plagued by corruption, a stagnant economy, and a lack of popular support. In 1949, after years of brutal conflict, Mao Zedong proclaimed the People's Republic of China, PRC, in Beijing. The communist victory in the Civil War was a turning point for the nation, but it marked the beginning of an era fraught with challenges. Upon assuming power, Mao Zedong set about remaking China in the image of his communist ideals. The Great Leap Forward, launched in 1958, aimed to rapidly industrialize the country and collectivize agriculture. Mao's government forced millions of farmers into collective farms, promising that the new system would boost productivity. However, the Great Leap Forward quickly became a disaster. Poor planning, disastrous policies, and forced labor led to widespread famine, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 30 million people. This catastrophe severely undermined Mao's popularity and led to a period of reflection for the leadership of the CCP. In 1966, Mao launched the Cultural Revolution, a movement aimed at preserving communist ideology and removing capitalist, traditional, and cultural elements from Chinese society. The revolution, marked by the rise of the Red Guards, led to widespread chaos, violent purges, and the destruction of cultural heritage. Intellectuals were persecuted, schools were shut down, and a whole generation was caught in the crossfire of Mao's ideological fervor. The Cultural Revolution was a dark chapter in China's history, leading to the deaths and imprisonment of millions. The movement ended only with Mao's death in 1976, leaving China deeply scarred but also on the verge of profound change. After Mao's death, Deng Xiaoping emerged as China's leader. Deng, a pragmatic reformer, sought to steer China away from the radicalism of the Cultural Revolution and open up the country to economic reform. In 1978, Deng implemented the open door policy, leading China to embrace market reforms and foreign investment. Deng's most notable reform was the socialism with Chinese characteristics, which allowed private enterprise, foreign businesses, and market-driven economics to play a major role in China's economy, all while maintaining the Communist Party's political control. Special Economic Zones, SEZs, were established, starting with Shenzhen, which became a hub for manufacturing and foreign trade. The open-door policy would lead to China's rapid economic growth and set the stage for its eventual global dominance. Deng Xiaoping's reforms set the stage for one of the most remarkable economic transformations in modern history. From the late 1970s into the 1990s, China's economy surged as it integrated into the global market. The country saw a massive increase in foreign direct investment, FDI, export production, and infrastructure development. By the time China hosted the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing, it had become the world's second-largest economy, behind only the United States. China was no longer an isolated communist nation but a critical player in the global economy. As China entered the 21st century, its economic expansion reached unprecedented levels. Exports, particularly in manufacturing and technology, fueled its rise as the world's factory. The government's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, further cemented China's role as a global economic influencer. By 2010, China had surpassed Japan to become the world's second-largest economy, and by 2021, it had the largest population of Internet users and was rapidly becoming the leader in artificial intelligence and renewable energy. China's global influence continued to expand, with its rising military power and strategic international alliances positioning it as a potential rival to the United States for global leadership. While China's economic rise has been impressive, it is not without its challenges. The country faces significant economic inequality, a rapidly aging population, and environmental concerns due to years of rapid industrialization. Moreover, political freedoms and human rights issues remain contentious topics, particularly regarding Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and Tibet. Despite these issues, China's global presence continues to grow. The country is pursuing technological innovation, developing its space program, and positioning itself as a leader in the fields of artificial intelligence, 5G technology, and renewable energy. As we look to the future, China's role in shaping global politics, economics, and technology will continue to evolve. From the ancient dynasties to the rise of communism, and through economic reforms, China's journey has been long and complex. The People's Republic of China stands today as a global superpower, a testament to the resilience, innovation, and ambition of its people. As China continues to evolve, its history offers us invaluable lessons in transformation, adaptability, and the pursuit of global influence. The path that led from ancient dynasties to the modern world is not just a story of a single country but a story of how China, despite countless challenges, forged its place in the annals of world history. And so, the story of China's entire history comes to a close for now. From the ancient imperial dynasties to the modern-day superpower, China's journey is a saga of triumphs, setbacks, revolutions, and rebirths. What will China's future look like as it continues to evolve on the global stage? As we end this journey, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of China's long and storied history fascinates you the most? Is it the ancient dynasties, the rise of communism, or perhaps China's modern-day economic rise? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. I always enjoy hearing your insights. If you enjoyed this journey through history, please like and subscribe to this channel for more in-depth explorations of the world's most fascinating histories. Click the bell so you never miss an episode, and thank you for watching.